Hello everybody, and welcome to World War II Explained. Please subscribe to the channel for regular content on the basis on fact World War II. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. off the Normandy coast. The horizon is a wall of gray steel. Over 5,000 ships, the largest armada ever assembled. You can almost hear the deep throb of engines, smell the salt and diesel and gunpowder as the first landing craft drop their ramps into the surf. Omaha Beach is a killing ground. Cliffs bristling with German machine guns, 88mm guns, concrete pillboxes. The men of the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions wade into chest-deep water under withering fire. Bodies float among the obstacles. Yet wave after wave presses forward. Inland, British and Canadian troops storm Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches with lighter opposition. American paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne, scattered the night before, fight their way toward the causeways. This is D-Day, Operation Overlord, the long-awaited second front that will finally crack Hitler's Fortress Europe. The planning had been monumental. Since the Tehran Conference in late 1943, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin had agreed the Western Allies would invade Northwest Europe in the spring of 1944. General Dwight D. Eisenhower was named Supreme Commander. The deception plan, Operation Fortitude, was masterful. Fake armies, inflatable tanks, bogus radio traffic convinced the Germans the main blow would come at the Pas de Calais, the shortest crossing point. Even after the landings began, many German commanders remained convinced it was a feint. Rommel, now in charge of Army Group B defending the coast, had urged a forward defense, panzers right on the beaches to smash the invaders before they could consolidate. Hitler, however, kept the panzer reserves under his personal control, far to the rear. When the landings came, confusion reigned. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt could not move armor without Hitler's approval. By the time the order came, hours had been lost. The Allies secured the beachheads. By June 12th, the 5 beaches were linked. Cherbourg fell on June 26th after brutal house-to-house fighting. Then came the bocage country, dense hedgerows that turned every field into a fortress. The Germans fought with grim determination, using the terrain to maximum advantage. Yet the Allies' material superiority was overwhelming. Endless streams of supplies across the Channel, air supremacy that made German movement by day almost suicidal, and fresh divisions pouring ashore. Operation Cobra, July 25th, broke the stalemate. Massive carpet bombing by over 1,500 heavy bombers pulverized the German lines west of Saint-Lô. The U.S. First Army burst through, and George S. Patton's newly activated Third Army poured into the breach. The breakout became a rout. German Army Group B was trapped in the Falaise pocket by mid-August. Canadian, British, American, and Free French forces closed the gap. Over 50,000 Germans were captured. Thousands more were killed. The remnants fled across the Seine. Paris was liberated on August 25th. De Gaulle entered the city in triumph, the crowds roaring. In the east, the Red Army launched Operation Bagration simultaneously with D-Day. In 3 weeks, it annihilated Army Group Center, destroying 28 of 34 divisions, killing or capturing nearly 400,000 men. The Red Army advanced 300 miles, reaching the outskirts of Warsaw by late July. The Baltic states were cut off. Finland sued for peace. By autumn 1944, the Soviets stood on the Vistula, ready to strike into the Reich itself. Hitler's response was delusion. On July 20, 1944, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg placed a bomb under the conference table at the Wolf's Lair. It exploded, but Hitler survived with minor injuries. The purge that followed was savage. Thousands were arrested, tortured, executed. Many hung with piano wire on meat hooks. The last remnants of the old officer class were eliminated. The SS and fanatics now dominated.
December 16, 1944, the Ardennes. Fog blankets the forest as 250,000 German troops, many wearing American uniforms in a desperate deception, launched the last major German offensive in the West, the Battle of the Bulge. The goal, capture Antwerp, split the Allied armies, force a negotiated peace. At first, it worked. The 106th Division was overrun. Bastogne was surrounded. Yet the American defense stiffened. Patton swung north in a legendary forced march. On Christmas Eve, the skies cleared. Allied air forces shredded the German spearheads. By January 1945, the Bulge was erased. Germany had thrown away its last reserves. The end came with terrifying speed. In the east, the Red Army launched Operation Vistula-Oder Offensive, January 12 to February 2, 1945, carried the Red Army to the gates of Berlin. In the west, the Allies crossed the Rhine on March 7 at Remagen. Hitler ordered the bridge blown, but the charges failed. By April, Allied armies were deep inside Germany. The Ruhr Pocket trapped 325,000 troops. Hitler retreated to the Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. The city was encircled by April 25th. The Red Army fought street by street. Hitler married Eva Braun on April 29th. The next day, he and Eva took their own lives. His body was burned in the garden. On May 2nd, Berlin surrendered. On May 8, 1945, VE Day, Germany capitulated unconditionally. Hitler's ambitions, once stretching from the Atlantic to the Urals, ended in a concrete tomb beneath a ruined capital. The war that had consumed a continent was over in Europe. The cost, over 50 million dead, entire cities erased, a continent scarred for generations.
November 20th, 1945. 9:45 a.m. in the cavernous Palace of Justice, Nuremberg, Germany. The courtroom is stark, floodlit, almost surgical in its brightness. 21 defendants, once the most powerful men in Europe, sit in 2 rows behind bulletproof glass, wearing dark suits and headphones for simultaneous translation. Hermann Göring, still corpulent despite months in captivity, stares straight ahead with practiced defiance. Rudolf Hess twitches nervously beside him. Joachim von Ribbentrop, once the smooth diplomat, now looks hollow-eyed and aged. The presiding judge, Sir Geoffrey Lawrence, opens the proceedings with a quiet, measured voice that carries through the silence. The trial, which is now to begin, is unique in the history of jurisprudence. Outside, the ruined city of Nuremberg lies under a gray November sky, its medieval towers shattered, its streets still smelling of smoke and wet plaster. You can almost feel the weight of the moment, the first time in history that the leaders of a defeated nation are called to account not by victor's vengeance, but by international law. The Nuremberg trials were not merely punishment, they were an attempt to define a new moral order after the abyss. The London Charter of August 8, 1945 established 4 counts: conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and, most revolutionary, crimes against humanity. For the first time, individuals could be held responsible for acts of state-sponsored terror on a scale previously unimaginable. The prosecution, led by U.S. Supreme Court Justice Robert H. Jackson, built its case methodically. Over 3,000 tons of documents were gathered, everything from Gestapo files to filmed evidence of concentration camps. The courtroom screen flickered with grainy footage, skeletal survivors staring blankly at the camera, bulldozers pushing piles of corpses into mass graves, the gas chambers at Auschwitz. When the films ended, there was utter silence. Some defendants wept. Göring, who had laughed off earlier testimony, sat rigid, jaw clenched. The defendants' defense was predictable. They claimed obedience to orders, denied knowledge of the worst atrocities, blamed Hitler alone. "I followed orders," said Wilhelm Keitel, chief of the OKW. "I was a soldier." The judges were unmoved. The doctrine of superior orders was rejected as a defense for crimes so egregious that any moral person would have known they were wrong. On October 1, 1946, the verdicts were read. 12 death sentences by hanging. Göring, Ribbentrop, Keitel, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, head of the RSHA, Alfred Rosenberg, Frank, Frick, Streicher, Funk, von Schirach, Zaukel, and Bormann in absentia. Göring cheated the gallows by swallowing cyanide hours before execution. 7 received prison terms ranging from 10 years to life. 3 were acquitted: Schalmar Schacht, Franz von Papen, and Hans Fritzsche. But Nuremberg was only the beginning. 12 subsequent trials prosecuted 185 more defendants, judges, doctors, industrialists, Einsatzgruppen commanders, SS officers. The doctors' trial established the Nuremberg Code of Medical Ethics. The industrialists' trial, Krupp, Flick, I.G. Farben, showed how German business had profited from slave labor and the Holocaust. The Einsatzgruppen trial convicted leaders of the mobile killing squads. Otto Ohlendorf admitted to 90,000 murders with chilling bureaucratic calm. Yet justice was incomplete. Many escaped. Adolf Eichmann, architect of the final solution, fled to Argentina. He was captured by Mossad in 1960 and tried in Jerusalem. Josef Mengele lived openly in South America until his death in 1979. Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, was protected by American intelligence before being extradited decades later. Thousands of lower-ranking perpetrators melted into civilian life in Germany, Austria, and abroad. The trials established enduring principles. Aggression is the supreme international crime. Individuals, not just states, bear responsibility. No one is above the law. They influenced the Genocide Convention of 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the foundations of the International Criminal Court. Hitler's ambitions, Lebensraum, racial empire, thousand-year Reich, ended not in glory, but in rubble and courtroom benches. The war he began claimed over 70 million lives worldwide. Europe was divided by the Iron Curtain. The Cold War began almost immediately. Yet from the ashes came something new, a fragile commitment to never again. Today, the Palace of Justice still stands in Nuremberg. A documentation center occupies the former Nazi parade grounds. Visitors walk through the same courtroom where history was judged. The message is quiet but unmistakable. The line between civilization and barbarism is thinner than we like to believe, and it must be guarded every day. The story of Hitler's rise, from Munich's smoke-filled rooms to the ruins of Berlin, is a warning etched in blood. Ambition without restraint, hatred given power, silence in the face of evil, these are the ingredients that can destroy the world. And they can do so again.